Matt George is here to get us back on track and focused on the Sacramento Kings. Matt, host of the Locked On Kings podcast. Always great to have you on. You're walking away from last night's game. Your biggest takeaway is the third quarter or the fourth quarter?
It's absolutely the third quarter, and it's not close. I said on my podcast today that had the Kings found a way to win that game and come back, I would have looked at it more as a complete colossal Suns collapse than I would have some Kings epic comeback. I don't think the Kings did anything universal or really revolutionary there in the fourth quarter. Nobody took over and went supernova. I think the Suns just absolutely fell apart. They saw the Kings empty their bench, put in Chimezie Metu and Damian Jones, and said, "Oh, we got this in the bag." And then two guys who decided they wanted to play hard, plus Davion Mitchell and then Harrison Barnes and De'Aaron Fox got going, caught them napping a little bit. No, the concerns for me are completely that third quarter, because to me it was a reminder of how bad this team was last season. It was the main issue for this Kings team last season, which a lot of think with defense, and that's true, but defense was a branch off of this tree. It's physicality. The Kings physically last season were soft. They were pushed around. And in both the first and especially the third quarters, the Kings were absolutely pushed around by a Suns team who picked up the pressure that Sacramento wasn't able to match. That was an issue that I didn't expect to be completely excommunicated from this team, but it was an issue that I didn't expect to come back as hard as it did during the third quarter of last night's game. And really the first and third quarters of the last two games, Sacramento has looked slow coming out of the gate and coming out of halftime, which we know has been an issue for Luke Walton and his entire time here in Sacramento. So, of course, Kenny, I debated and talked about, well, do you blame Luke? Do you blame the players? It's a combination of everything. And I think the biggest thing that I was most concerned about, and I wonder if you guys have discussed it today, is once again, while this complete unraveling of a third quarter is happening, Luke Walton calls two separate timeouts. I didn't see, now I wasn't at the game, I'm watching on TV. I didn't see a leader step up, period. I don't know if Luke Walton tried to fire them up twice during timeouts and they didn't respond to it. I don't know if De'Aaron was trying to say things on the floor. We know he's not that vocal leader. Tristan Thompson, we've heard, is supposed to be a leader. I didn't see any evidence of him trying to light a fire under their asses during it. Like, once again, it was the same kind of leaderless blind leading the blind during that third quarter, and it was a disaster.
Yeah, and that third quarter was extremely disappointing on a number of different levels. When you talk about what we are expecting to see from this team this year, what we hoped was different, it was a lot of the same. You brought up the physicality, which was a great point. I don't know how many they had in this particular quarter, but just overall, the turnovers and the carelessness with the basketball, that was something that was very frustrating to watch. And I want to see them not lose focus of the task at hand and not lose focus of some of the momentum that they built earlier in training camp and coming into the season. When you talk about the toughness, when you talk about the emphasis on the defensive end, when you talk about value in the basketball, stay the course with everything that's going on. Do you think that right now, in your opinion, they've lost sight of that a little bit? 12 games in, they're kind of reverting back to old habits?
No, because what I can say confidently is that I do not believe that this is who this team is. Like what we saw in the third quarter, I don't believe at all is what this Sacramento Kings team is. Versus last season, I knew that was what they was because they were that consistently. Now, if we go into this very, very winnable 4-game road trip where the Kings, in my opinion, should be winning minimum 3, if they go in and at any point, but especially in the next game, they come out of the second half looking softer. At any point during the game, they look like they're being pushed around and they've reverted back. Then I'll start to be concerned a little bit if I start to see a pattern of consistency to the point where I can start to question, hey, was the start of the season an anomaly or not? As of right now, the start of the season is who I believe this team to be. And I expect what we saw in last night's game to be the anomaly. And like we knew bad games were going to happen. We knew there were going to be bad scoring nights. And to some extent, the Indiana Pacers game was a good example of that, right? The shots weren't falling, but the defense somehow kept them in there with a chance to win that game. Not preaching moral victories to you. I'm just saying that's been the difference with this team. Last night's game was the first time we saw both the offense and the defense crap the bed at the same time and look unsalvageable. So I'm going to take that quarter for what it was in the grand scheme of the season and say that's the anomaly as of right now, and hope that I'm hope that I'm right.
Yeah, I hope so too, because Kenny and I talked a lot about this today. It feels like there's been just enough of that we referred to last night's game as a rerun. Like, we've seen it before. We've seen them be really bad offensive. We've seen them look like they have no shot at winning. And then all of a sudden something happens over a 4-minute stretch or a 5-minute stretch, and they reel you back in with an opportunity to win in the final minutes, and in last night's case, in the final possession. And I think that, or final possessions, I should say, and I think that, as much as anything else, is kind of causing some Kings fans angst, because Kenny and I know you have too, have spent so much time talking about this team is different. This is different. They're wired different. They're built different. They fight different. They operate different. But that looked the same. That Pacers game looked the same. And then there's just enough moments here and there where you can point out in maybe games that they've won or games that they lost and go, that's that Kings team from 2019 or 2020 right there.
Yeah, and I'm not going to let anybody be fooled who didn't watch the game, who just look at the final score and think, okay, the Kings lost a battle to a better team in the Phoenix Suns. I'm not letting anybody be fooled by that final score. The Kings might as well have been blown out by 25 last night, as far as I see it. It was an embarrassing showing in those first and third quarters. And, people want to say, and to Luke Walton's credit, he opened up his press conference after the game saying that he was proud of the team fighting and not giving up, which I understand, but he didn't make any excuses. He didn't focus on that. He was asked, I think Jason Anderson asked him, like, what do you look at more? Do you look at that third quarter or that fourth quarter more? Kind of similar to you guys asked. And he said, I want them to look at both. I want them to take away stuff from both, which is kind of, it's a fence sitting answer, but I just appreciated that Walton didn't come out and go, you know what, really love the fight from our guys there. We didn't quit. We didn't roll over. It was, now our third quarter was disgusting and we need to clean that crap up. Like, that's essentially what he said. And I appreciated that from him because he knows that third quarter can't happen for this team anymore. That's not who this team is. That is the ugly stepchild in the corner that they've tried to get rid of. That is starting to come back out a little bit. And I don't think, D'Lo, it's coincidence. Now, I'm not putting this on Buddy Hield because I did a podcast recently after the Indiana loss, kind of apologizing to Buddy Hield, because I think Buddy's been great this season. Very, very good. And I've been making sure to try and give him as much of his praise and the roses as he deserves. I don't think it's a coincidence that Buddy moves back into the starting lineup and they revert back to these kind of, and it's not a Buddy Hield issue. I think it's a lineup issue. I think, and it's not that you disagree. Like, I don't think.
No, I think we tend to put like a little bit more of the blame on Buddy than you would.
Okay. I mean,
Casey, we've talked with, James Ham used the line that we've quoted a couple of times, like sometimes because we've talked about Terrence Davis and Terrence Davis having the performance he had yesterday, which he played really well before leaving the game late with an injured ankle. But James gave that, like, I think sometimes Buddy takes the air out of the second unit because he's looking for his threes. He's looking for his 13, 14, 15, 16 shots a game. And sometimes that keeps guys like Terrence Davis from getting into a rhythm. They needed Terrence Davis to play last night with Tyrese Halliburton out. You put Buddy in the starting line. He still got his 16 shots. It looked exactly the same for Buddy Hield. Harrison Barnes was 7 of 9. Now, I know he went to the free throw line a lot, but in a game like that, I would have liked to have seen Harrison be able to work a little bit more. De'Aaron's De'Aaron's field goals got to where they got because of the fourth quarter, because of how aggressive he got in the final 12 minutes. So I get that your Buddy has played really, really well in the role that he's been put in. But I'm with you in the sense I don't think it's an accident that the team played like they did last night with Buddy back in the starting lineup. I also, more importantly, don't think it's an accident that Buddy played the way that he did back in the starting lineup.
Yeah, actually, what's interesting there, just thinking and trying to form a counter argument, but also thinking more into it. Like, if Buddy Hield's not in that starting lineup and Tyrese Halliburton is in that lineup, the Kings almost need Harrison Barnes to shoot more because Tyrese is not a volume shooter, which the Kings actually want more of. You heard De'Aaron Fox tell him to shoot the effing ball. So maybe that changes a little bit. And if one guy's taking all the shots, they got to come from somewhere to some capacity. But I also look at, like, I hear what you're saying about Terrence Davis too. Is he taking the air and the opportunity out of Terrence Davis's pockets? I don't think it's Buddy Hield's fault that Terrence Davis entered that game shooting 15% or whatever it was from 3-point range, and he hit his first three. It might not have been that high. So, like, I don't know how much. I look at the scoring drop off with the second unit that Buddy was in the starting lineup, and I say, now I need Buddy to still come off the bench for this Kings team, not because of how slow the team started in the first and third quarters, because, I mean, still the Kings bench somehow managed to be effective. And I'm mainly talking about Chimezie Metu and Damian Jones at the end of the game. And Terrence Davis had a good first quarter, I believe. But as a whole, like, the bench unit was significantly worse offensively when the Kings needed help getting back into the game because Buddy was part of that starting unit. I think last night further proved across the board that Buddy is better coming off the bench. What he does, if he's providing it with the starters versus providing it with the bench, is better overall for the bench.
Right. And I agree with that. But also, to, I guess, everybody's point, we all agree here, Buddy Hield in that first half, he led the team in shot attempts. It was 5 of 10 from the field. Harrison Barnes only took 6 shot attempts, had 6 free throws. So once again, he might have had 3 more shot attempts. De'Aaron Fox had 9. And Buddy Hield, he shouldn't be leading the team in field goal attempts. You know what I mean? And that's kind of in the point of what James is saying and what myself and Damian kind of see is, like, it's always going to be Buddy Hield getting the shots up. Like, it's always. And whether that's kind of, making things mucked up for the starters if he's starting, or the bench guys. You know what I'm saying? No matter what, Buddy is getting his 10 shots up in a half. And that's something that I think some people would rather see him pull back a little bit on. It doesn't hurt you as much, I think, when he's coming off the bench, because you've already got these other guys, these starters in a rhythm, Tyrese, De'Aaron, Harrison, Rashawn even in a rhythm. But coming up when he's a starter, that's when it's like, well, they can't even find their rhythm. And I think that's where you get back to having the Buddy Hield that played last year and was a starting 2 guard, and how that kind of hampered the team as opposed to the role that he's playing this year, where he can let it fly coming off the bench and everything will be all right.
I think the way the Kings were playing too, which is also a reason why they struggled, especially in the third quarter, it opens up the door for Buddy to take a lot of shots. They like to play inside out, in the sense that they try and get De'Aaron or someone downhill, draw in a crowd, and kick out for Buddy for an open 3. The problem is, anybody with a brain on the Phoenix Suns goes, okay, I'm not leaving Buddy Hield. I know exactly what they're doing, unless I'm forced to, because De'Aaron's right there and it's me or a clear lane to the basket. And yet De'Aaron and the Kings, they settled far too many times for burst of speed, get into mid-range. Even with DeAndre Ayton not in the game, JaVale McGee's back there. Okay, step back, pull-up jumper, rimmed out. Or, okay, now we're going to kick it out from the midi instead of actually trying to attack around the rim and kick it out. Okay, there wasn't enough time for me to draw in the defense for there to be an open shot on the perimeter. So I think it's a combination of everything. The Phoenix Suns did a very good job. I don't want to give them credit, because I think the Kings were just all around horrible. And the fact that the Suns allowed them to still somehow make a game of that is embarrassing for the Suns, who have won 5 straight and still have a ton of problems. But I lost my train of thought. Basically, I think that, I don't know where the heck I was going with that.
That's fine. I can tell you that, having things to fix when you've won 5 straight is a lot easier than having things to fix
I'll take that.
When you're 5 and 6. And that's where the Kings are right now. How was Tyrese's absence really glaring for you yesterday?
It was. That's what it was. Half court offense. This Kings team in the half court, and the Phoenix Suns did a really good job forcing the Kings in the half court. They still aren't good, and their arguably best half court facilitator was not playing in Tyrese Halliburton, who can play on the pick and roll with anybody. And look, I don't think it's a coincidence. Not that, like, every time there's a game like this and a key player like Tyrese is out, everybody's going to put everything on Tyrese. The Kings weren't physical enough. Was it because of Tyrese? The Kings didn't, or this guy had a bad game. Was it because of Tyrese? And I try not to put too many eggs in that basket, but I also don't think it's a coincidence, D'Lo, that Richaun Holmes didn't have the best of games, especially offensively, because Tyrese was not with him. And Richaun, there's no one who benefits more than Tyrese, or with Tyrese on the floor, than Richaun Holmes. So I don't think it's a coincidence that the two of them not being together had an effect on how Richaun played. So I don't think Tyrese is as, how do I phrase this? I don't think Tyrese is as good as the Kings were bad last night without him. But I think Tyrese, his necessity for this team and how good he is for this team in the half court was glaringly apparent, because they struggle in half court offense even with Tyrese on the floor. Without him, it's very basic, very, very basic. And when you don't have a creator like Tyrese out there to spice up the basic a little bit, it's not too hard to figure out how to beat this Kings team.
Well, the crazy thing about this is they have a creator. And I don't know. I'm not talking about you in general, Matt, but I mean, the offense should not fall apart when you still have a De'Aaron Fox out there on the floor. And I was so upset with his play for the first 3 quarters of that game. And I was like, this is getting utterly ridiculous. And he salvaged it a little bit with how he played in that fourth quarter. He wasn't perfect in that fourth quarter, but he was much better. And I said earlier, Matt, that should be the norm of a game from De'Aaron Fox. The way he played in the fourth quarter, the way he attacked, the way he played with confidence out there, out on the perimeter, the way he was looking to attack, whether it's to create for others or to score for himself. That should be just normal. It should be nothing where we see this distinct difference in how he's playing. I said that I'm kind of done with the whole get De'Aaron off the ball and let him play off the ball some. Like, it's clear to me he's most effective in its totality. Maybe he has a better shooting percentage on catch and shoot, whatever. But he's most effective with the ball in his hands. And I'm kind of done with the whole, hey, let somebody else, Tyrese, bring the offense, initiate. No, just De'Aaron needs to do that, and we'll find out everything else around that. What do you think about all that?
Well, to be fair to De'Aaron, he also had a halfway decent stretch in the second quarter. It wasn't the full quarter like the fourth. He had a halfway decent stretch in the second where he got going after another poor start, and I pulled a Deuce Mason and tweeted out the Undertaker rising from the grave gif, and that's probably what screwed him over in the third quarter, just like Deuce screwed the Sacramento Kings over, or rather the Oakland A's over in the wild card game against the Kansas City Royals that I still have not gotten over.
Anyway, noticed. Definitely didn't notice.
Wow.
Like you've got that Kenny Caraway grudge gene.
It's like Deuce Mason and John Lester on the exact same wavelength in my mind, to be honest with you, as I unplug my headphones. But I'm going to keep going. Basically,
you okay?
I think De'Aaron,
are you all right, buddy?
What you said, honestly, one step further. This is really difficult to do. I'm going to take what you said, Kenny, one step further and say, don't bully me, don't laugh.
You're supposed to fix the show. You were supposed to come in and get us back going again.
So my hip hop icons. No. Kenny, I want to take what you said almost a step further. What you said is exactly right. How De'Aaron was attack-minded in the fourth quarter. That's how he should be normally when the Sacramento Kings have all their players, when Tyrese Halliburton is playing. De'Aaron needed to do more on top of his normal last night with Tyrese Halliburton being out. The secondary ball handler, the guy that's taking your primary ball handler status away, he's out of the game. You need to completely take over that game from start to finish. And once again, I saw it was a team issue. It's not all on De'Aaron, but he's the guy. He's the max contract player, so everything's going to fall harder on his shoulders. He was not ready for that role. He was not ready to go to start the first and third quarters when the Kings needed him most. And in the fourth quarter, he did get going, but I would argue he fed off the energy of two end of the bench guys than anything else. So De'Aaron continues to be disappointing, continues to be concerning. At least we saw that fourth quarter, so we know he still has it in him. I I wonder how much of it at this point is, hey, I'm trying to figure out how to fit in still with these guys, and how much of it is, man, I no longer have to always create and have the ball in my hand and be this 100% downhill, lower the shoulder, fighting amongst the trees type player. Like, I know JaVale McGee is a shot blocker and can be an intimidating presence down there in the paint, but when DeAndre Ayton's not playing in that game, you should be a lot more willing to attack the basket than you would be had Ayton played in that game. So everybody has to be better. But yes, De'Aaron continues to, and I think you tweeted it out, Kenny, like you can't give De'Aaron a pass. You can't be making excuses for De'Aaron. And this is where you need your star to step up, especially with one of your best players is out and others of your best players aren't playing well. It was a case of too little, too late for De'Aaron.
Well, here's the good news. Neither of you can tell me what to do. So I pulled up some notes from De'Aaron Fox over the last 4 games. 20.3 points per game, 77% from the free throw line, 40% from 3, 44% field goal percentage. He's starting to, ramping up maybe just a little bit, but when you look at that over the first stretch of games, and you just give him about 4 or 5 more, and if it still ain't there, okay, I'm done. I can't do it, because I'm using the example of last year, and if I don't have the example of last year to fall on anymore, I'm out.
No, actually, I think I'm with you, honestly, D-Lo, because I'm still not in panic mode. I'm disappointed with De'Aaron Fox. And again, I'm not trying to preach moral victories to anybody, because I hate moral victories, especially this season. But even with De'Aaron struggling, this Kings team is still 5-6. They have 4 very winnable games. If there's a time for De'Aaron to get right, hey man, go on the road and show up and go ham against some of these teams that there aren't too high of expectations. OKC, you want to drop a 30-40 spot? Go for it. San Antonio, you want to drop a 30-40 spot? Be my guest. Like they're Houston. De'Aaron's from Houston. He loves that area. Drop one in Houston. I think they played the Houston Rockets, if I'm not mistaken.
Not on this trip.
Oh, well, when they do go to Houston.
They play in Texas. That's close enough.
Close enough by proxy.
Texas is not a big state at all.
I'm not in panic mode yet with De'Aaron, and I don't think 11. Good math. 11 games is enough of a barometer to judge De'Aaron completely when we have all of last season still to pull on, in my opinion. So I'm still with you, D-Lo. I'm not in the let's condemn the guy, but I also do understand KC saying you can't give the guy a pass when this cold stretch is now 11 games instead of like just 4 or 5 or 6 when we were talking earlier on in the season. And I guess the question to throw back is, at what point, D-Lo, you mentioned the next 4 or 5 games, at what point does it go from a cold stretch to this is the player that you are this year or with this team? That's what, because nobody really has that number set. Is it 20? Is it 15? Is it 18? Like, I don't know what that number is.
Yeah, I don't think 20 is a disappointment. I mean, I know we wanted 25 or 26 or 27. Like a player averaging 20 plus points per game is not a disappointment. But if it starts to, creep below that, and his average, I think right now is 18.3, if I'm not mistaken. I'll confirm that for everybody. It's 18.6. I'm sorry. If it stays there for half the season, like, yeah, that this didn't work out the way we thought.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm actually I didn't communicate that well. I meant like how many games into the season does De'Aaron continue this cold stretch before we start to worry if this is a cold stretch or who he actually is with this team? That's what I meant. Like what that number is, if there is such a number, because I think it's different for different people.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna have Garrett Cole answer you, because I feel like he can answer it better.
I don't know. I don't know if I don't quite know how to answer that, to be honest.
I don't know. Like I don't. He's not. I don't know, dude. I'm literally this soundbite. I don't know how to answer that.
But look, I'll say. I mean, look, I was ready for him to play. I think we're all in the same boat where it's not like almost whatever he does. Nobody's trying to get rid of him. Like in this group right here, nobody.
Some people are.
From him, but I was ready for him to step up his play after game 3. Like I was like, this is not good enough. And I know, I don't want to call it trendy because it's not that. I don't want to demean it or sound condescending, but I know a lot of people are like, he'll be fine. No need to worry. I can't believe you're worrying right now. Like, gotta play better, man. Like, I expect a lot more out of him. People comparing it to Dame. And if I was a Trailblazers fan, yeah, he might end up playing better, but this isn't good. Like, this needs to change now. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that's how I feel about De'Aaron Fox. I think he's a great ball player. I expect a lot out of him. I expect him to be a guy that you can rely on for at least 22, 23 points a night. He's that talented. And I look at what he's able to do out there on the court in a fourth quarter when things are dire. And like I said, it wasn't even the fact that he played perfect, because he didn't play perfect in that fourth quarter, but the bounce in his step, the confidence, the aggression, those are things that I should not watch De'Aaron Fox and sit up here and be like, why is he being so passive? Why is he just standing over in the corner right now? I should never see that. That's before we even talk about miss or made shots. But I should never sit up there and be like, man, I can't stand how passive he is right now. It shouldn't happen.
And I think the only thing that I have really to add to that is it makes it even more glaring when you have other young players in the league who, I know there are players like you mentioned, Damian Lillard, who are off to slow starts this season, and James Harden, people are pointing that out. Has the rule change have anything to do with it, or why are these guys off to such slow starts for their respective teams? But then you have young players like John Morant who are off to the great starts that they're in, and that's the category that we would expect De'Aaron Fox to be in, that next generation that's getting off to a good start, while some of these older guys are falling off a little bit with these rule changes. The fact that De'Aaron is lumped into that Harden and Lillard group, which normally would be a good thing, in this case it's not, that's just adds to the concern, Kenny.
Yeah.
You mentioned, some of the young players with passion. We talked extensively about Tyrese and Buddy starting. If Tyrese is out another game or potentially series of games, is Davey on the call to go into the starting lineup?
I think he is.
Or should he be on the call to go into the starting lineup?
I think he is, and people might view that as a punishment to Buddy Hield, but it's really not. It's I want and maybe need what Buddy provides coming off of the bench versus
and you won't have it in Terrence Davis now too.
Yeah.
At least it does. At least I doubt you will.
Yeah. So yeah, and Davion is that classic plug and play guy, and we've seen that with the different lineups that he's been featured in. You can plug Davion Mitchell in and know what he's going to do coming right out of the gate. And I think it maybe the start to yesterday's game, that 7-0 start for the Phoenix Suns, looks a little bit different if Fox is guarding Paul and Mitchell's on Booker or vice versa. Maybe that looks a little bit different versus Buddy Hield having to take the job of trying to stay in front of Kobe reincarnated and Devin Booker. And Devin he's very fun to watch. I used to be very anti Devin Booker kind of because of his attitude and the way that he played. And I've gained a lot of respect for him just watching him, and especially last year's team, how he stepped up with last year's team. I watched Devin Booker, and I was listening at one point. I was driving during, I think, the second quarter, and Devin Booker hit one of his turnaround mid-range jumpers, and G-Man starts talking about there's nobody else in the league that does it like Devin. And I was waiting for him to mention Kobe and bring up that was Kobe's shot that Devin has committed himself to learning. We know Kobe was both a mentor and a hero to Devin Booker. So I don't know how I got on a Devin Booker tangent, but I'm just impressed by him. Yeah. I'm gonna use some candy
Matt, I love you, buddy.
Thank you.
Hey.
I really enjoy flustered Matt George.
This hoodie's got me really cozy because it's a great hoodie and I want to take a nap. So
I think the extra swag level with the blue hoodie of D'Lo and Casey has you a little bit shook. You're not quite used to it. For those who are listening on the radio and the Odyssey app, Matt has the hood pulled up, despite the fact he's very much in the comfy confines of his own home. He's got the hood pulled up, and
you don't want to see what's underneath.
Oh my!
What? What?
You're right, Matt. I don't want to see what's underneath the blue hoodie. You look very nice in the blue hoodie. Let's just leave it on. I just think it's throwing you off your game a little bit. You're a little You're halfway through the marathon now. You're eating crackers to get some of that energy back. Like
he's having candy corn.
It's not crackers.
What are you eating?
Candy corn.
Candy corn.
That's disgusting, Matt.
It sucks. I hate it. I don't know why I'm eating.
I don't know why candy corn gets a bad rap. Now I'm not going to go.
It tastes like crap.
Candy corn, but it's not that bad.
Okay, here we go. You want to take this off the rails? The holiday candy that I will defend to the bitter end, and I have not found a single person who likes them like I do, is the chalk hearts for Valentine's Day. I love those things, man.
Oh, those are disgusting. Now those
I don't even think that's food.
Yeah,
I think that's literally chalk.
It is, right. But I like those.
Chalk mixed with sugar with a message written on it.
Hey, I like the messages there.
Yeah, you two right there, Matt. You're a 101.
You're the only person with a more childish way of eating than Kenny.
I've gotten a little bit better.
A little
bit better.
I used to walk by Matt's studio and he's drinking like a Mountain Dew with like a Snickers bar or something. Like, what are you doing?
Snickers.
There's really nothing wrong with that.
I only eat fruity candy like Skittles and Starburst and things like that.
That makes it even dumber.
Yeah, Snickers is gross. No, it's like fruit, and fruit is good for you.
Relax.
Fruit is good for you. Skittles are good for you. But you got on me one time because I drink Gatorade a lot when I'm not exercising. he ripped me for drink as I just come in with, and I still do. I drink Gatorade almost every single day, and it's just a thing that I don't understand. Like, here, replenish your lost electrolyte. You lost electrolyte sitting like on the couch. Like, what do you mean? I got up and I walked to the fridge and I need to refuel.
Yeah,
you two are two peas in a pod, man. I swear. In an effort to save the final few minutes of this program, which it's probably far too late. Do you like the 8-man row? Do you like this tight rotation that Luke Walton is running?
I don't during back-to-backs.
And he did it. He was like, yeah, second night of a back-to-back. Who cares? We're running these guys.
Both back-to-backs because they've had 2 back-to-backs now, right? Yeah,
they did. Yeah, yesterday
both back-to-backs he did because game 1 of the first back-to-back, I asked him. I was like, because it was when they lost on the road and they came back and beat New Orleans, but I can't remember who they. Oh, was it Dallas? Yeah, it might have been Dallas. I asked Luke after the game. I was like, were you thinking ever? Because no one played, and out of that 8-man rotation, nobody played less than like 26 or 27 minutes or something like that. I was like, did you think about it all? The ramifications of that the next night? And he goes, yeah, I thought about it, but I'm trying to win a basketball game. So I respect that. He's been trying to win these games. And at the time, those 8-man rotations give him the best chance to win, especially with Tyrese Halliburton now. Well, with Tyrese out, maybe I can understand an 8-man rotation, but they need to find that 9th man. I think Terrence Davis needs to be that 9th man, or they need to find someone to be. Hell, with how Chimezie Metu played on both ends of the floor last night, consider Chimezie for that 9th man spot, giving him a little bit of burn, a little bit of run, because I know Freeport played really, really well. And I was really impressed with Davian Jones too. I think this team needs to find that 9th productive man to give some guys a little bit of a break. That being said, I do like how much Fox and or Halliburton and or Mitchell, or all 3 of them, have been on the floor together. And I understand that only happens with an 8-man rotation.
Yeah, I don't have much of a problem with it. I think number 1, Terrence Davis will be that 9th guy to be into the rotation. And then number 2, I think Luke is coaching this way. I feel like the guys, for the most part, have played this way. There's a sense of urgency from the start, and you can't worry about wearing guys down in March if you're 10 games under 500 by the time you get to March. Like, every single game is a game that needs to be won and played as if, like, we got to win this. We've got to start this way. So I understand the concerns of, kind of running guys out there night after night and not going deep into the bench. But I mean, this is what we talked about all summer, right? Sense of urgency right from the start. And they don't have the luxury of maybe necessarily having the talent on the roster, the high-end talent, to say, like a Lakers team might think they can do. All we need to do is be ready for the playoffs, because the Kings don't have that.
Right.
So game 12 is just as important as game 52 right now. And I think that's the way the coach Luke Walton is going into every game, and I understand the concern, but I don't have much of a problem with it.
Guys, I thought it was interesting that both Tristan Thompson and Marvin Bagley were the only ones not to play in last night's game. And granted, Walton made the right decision in going with Metu and Jones off the bench because they helped to get them back into it. But I was talking with a friend of mine and Return of the Roar podcast host Chris Watkins during the game. We were talking about, man, like Marvin, I don't know what Marvin has to do to be able to get into the game because he can't get in during a then 24-point blowout. I don't know when he's getting in. So I was curious, like, which of these three theories that I kind of came up with makes the most sense in your mind? Or maybe it's probably a combination of all three. Number one is you chose to go with a guy like Metu and Damian Jones because you expect them to potentially be on your team and you know they're going to be on your team for somewhat of an extended period of time, or at least maybe you have hopes that they can be. So you want to give them run versus a guy that you know on his way out the door. Number two is Marvin Bagley's just being punished really for the comments of his agent and the comments of his entire camp. And the Kings aren't going to kind of reward that and are punishing Bagley by proxy really. Or number three, there's some agreement in place between Bagley's camp and the Sacramento Kings saying if it's a blowout, don't play our client because we don't want him getting hurt in meaningless minutes and potentially costing him the money that he's going to get during the offseason. Those are the only three theories I could come up with.
No, I think there's a far those are all Oliver Stone theories. Those are conspiracy theories right there. I think the answer is very, very simple. Luke Walton went to the guys that he thought could potentially win him a basketball game, and Marvin Bagley's not one of those guys.
You think Luke Walton went to both Metu and Damian Jones off the bench down 24 in the fourth quarter?
I don't. I do not. I do not think that. I think when De'Aaron Fox went back into the game with 9 minutes left, that was okay. They're not done. Yeah, they're not done.
I'll say this real quick. For the way that they want to play basketball, those guys benefit what they're trying to do better.
I agree with that.
That doesn't mean that they're better. Marvin isn't better than them. It's just a basketball player by himself. But the style of play that they're trying to incorporate and what they're trying to do, those two work better for what they're trying to do right now.
I agree with that. And also the Kings don't get back in that game if they don't create some stops. And Chimezie Metu played well defensively, and Damian Jones is a big athletic body, so they help create stops. I don't know if Marvin Bagley creates any stops when he comes to the game. So I understand the argument. I just think it's curious that even in a 24-point blowout at home, Marvin Bagley can't get any burn.
He's not that good.
I
think
agree.
That's how he's viewed within the coaching staff. Like he's just not that good. And here's the other thing. Clearly, obviously, the outcome was wrong. It's not the outcome we wanted. But in terms of that switch, isolating just that right there, he made the right call.
He absolutely did. 100%.
Yeah.